At the family party. My parents laughed in front of everyone. What's the point of that job? And Uncle Ron snorted, useless work. I smiled, mentally marking each person who would hear the rest of my story tonight. They didn't know I controlled the schedule, the guest list, and the microphone for an event happening tonight right here in this house. When the mayor walked in and the people I'd helped began appearing one by one, the whole room would have to swallow their mockery. Tonight, I wouldn't need to raise my voice. The truth would do the work for me, and every seat would burn hot. My name is Elena Hart, and at 33, I've become the family's designated event coordinator not by choice, but by assumption. Every gathering, every celebration, every milestone moment somehow becomes my responsibility. Despite having what my parents call not a real job at the North River Community Alliance in Riverton, Ohio. This afternoon, I arrived at my parents' colonial 2 hours early for my brother Evan's engagement party, hauling string lights from my car while Carol, my mother, supervised from the porch. "The tables need to go closer to the garden," she called out, not offering to help. "You're so good at these things, Elena. Must be all that nonprofit organizing." The dismissive edge in her voice wasn't new. For 5 years, I'd been coordinating services for domestic violence survivors through NRCA, connecting them with shelters, legal counsel, job training programs. But to my family, I was just Elena who works at that charity place, as if my work was a hobby I'd eventually outgrow. My father, Martin, emerged from the garage with folding chairs. "Your sister's bringing the twins," he said, avoiding eye contact. "Maybe set up a kids' corner. You know how to handle these logistics better than us." "Saul, the unspoken message hung clear since you don't have a family of your own to prepare. You might as well handle ours." I arranged the chairs in neat rows, strung lights across the oak trees, tested the sound system for the playlist I'd curated, all while my phone buzzed with work emails. One made me pause confirmation for tonight's community recognition ceremony. The timing was perfect. I'd known about Evan's party for months and had deliberately scheduled our event for 9 p.m. right here in my parents' backyard. They'd agreed to loan the space weeks ago, thinking it was just another one of my little community things. "Elena, my sister Brooke arrived, her twins racing ahead. Thank God you're here. Can you watch them while I help Mom with the food?" She didn't wait for an answer, already heading inside. This was the pattern I was useful for tasks, invisible for recognition. Uncle Ron's pickup truck rumbled into the driveway. Ron Kettner, owner of Kettner Auto and Storage, the man who never missed a chance to remind everyone about his successful business while questioning why I wasted a college degree on charity work. He climbed out, surveying the decorations. "Looks nice," he admitted grudgingly. "Though I still don't get why you don't use these skills for something profitable. All this nonprofit nonsense, it's not sustainable. Elena, helping people who can't help themselves, that's the government's job." I kept arranging centerpieces, each placement deliberate. "Someone needs to connect people to resources," I said evenly. "Resources." Ron scoffed. "Fancy word for handouts. In business, we call that enabling." He grabbed a beer from the cooler I'd stocked. "Your parents worry about you. You know, 33, no husband, no real career path, just running around town playing Mother Teresa." My phone vibrated again. Nadia, my director, confirming the mayor's attendance. I tucked the phone away, schooling my expression into practiced neutrality. Elena, the music. Evan appeared with his fiancée Maddie, both glowing with pre-wedding excitement. "You did remember the music, right?" "All set," I assured him, pulling up the playlist. "Your favorites and Maddie's, perfectly timed for the evening." Maddie squeezed my arm. "You're amazing. Honestly, I don't know how you manage everything. Your job must be so demanding. And then you do all this too." Before I could respond, Carol's voice cut through. "Oh, her job's not like that. Lots of downtime in nonprofit work. Not like real jobs where you're accountable for profits and performance." "Right." Elena. The familiar sting settled in my chest. I smiled, nodded, and excused myself to check the lights one more time. In my pocket, my phone showed another message. The domestic violence survivor, Ron, had refused to rent storage space till last month. She'd be attending tonight with her daughter. Thanks to NRCA's job placement program and landlord advocacy, she now had employment and a reference letter that secured her a different storage unit. The sun was beginning to set, casting golden light through the leaves I'd spent an hour positioning the tables to catch. Everything was perfect for Evan's party. But more importantly, everything was perfect for what would come after, when the useless work would speak for itself, right here in the heart of my family's skepticism. I returned to the kitchen where final preparations were underway, keeping my secret close, my smile steady. In 3 hours, everything would change. The party was in full swing by 7:30. Relatives clustered in familiar groups across the backyard. I'd transformed into an elegant venue. Martin clinked his beer bottle with a fork, calling for attention. The conversations gradually died down as my father took center stage, Carol beaming beside him. "We're thrilled to celebrate Evan and Maddie tonight," Martin began, his voice carrying that particular tone of paternal pride I'd rarely heard directed at me. Evan's made us proud youngest senior analyst at his firm, just bought his first house, and now bringing this wonderful woman into our family. Polite applause rippled through the crowd. I stood near the drink station I'd organized, watching my brother glow under the attention. "Both our other kids are here too," Martin continued, gesturing toward Brooke. Brooke, raising 2 beautiful children while managing her real estate career. He paused, his eyes finding me. "And Elena, who's helping out at one of those community centers." The dismissive shrug in his voice cut deeper than silence would have. A few relatives turned to look at me with those familiar expressions, part pity, part confusion about why I'd chosen such a path. Carol stepped forward, her wine glass catching the string lights. "We always hoped all our children would find real careers, something substantial, but Elena insists on her, what do you call it, honey community work." She laughed, that tinkling sound that preceded her sharpest cuts. "I keep telling her maybe if she focused on a proper job instead of running around playing social worker, she'd have what Evan has by now. Or what anyone has." Ron's voice boomed from his table. He was 3 beers in, his volume increasing with each one. "I mean, what is it you actually do? Elena hand out flyers, organize bake sales." He snorted that dismissive sound that would echo in my mind later. Useless work, if you ask me. No offense, but someone needs to say it. You're 33, not 23. Time to grow up and get a real job that actually contributes something. The silence that followed was deafening. I saw Maddie's eyes widen in shock, saw Evan shift uncomfortably, but no one spoke up. Not one person. "Ron's got a point," Cousin Jeffrey chimed in, emboldened. "I mean, how do you even pay rent? Must be nice to have family help when your career is basically volunteer work." "I pay my own rent," I said quietly, but my voice was swallowed by Ron's continued tirade. "See, this is what's wrong with your generation," he continued, gesturing with his beer. "All this bleeding heart nonsense. In my day, you got a job that paid bills, that built something real, not this feel-good, accomplish-nothing bull." "Ron," Brooke interrupted weakly, "it's Evan's night." But the damage was done. The relatives were nodding along, some murmuring agreement. I caught fragments. "Shame? Really? All that education wasted. Parents must be so disappointed." Carol raised her glass again. "Well, let's just hope Evan and Maddie's future children follow their father's example rather than their aunt's." The laughter that followed was nervous but real. To Evan and Maddie and to real success. Everyone raised their glasses. Everyone except me. I stood there, my hands steady on the table I'd decorated with flowers from my own garden, watching my family toast to everything they thought mattered while dismissing everything I'd built. My phone buzzed another confirmation for tonight's event. The police officer from our district, the shelter coordinator. 3 families whose lives had been transformed. "Elena, could you grab more ice?" Mom called out, already turning away, assuming compliance. I walked to the kitchen, each step measured. At the sink, I caught my reflection in the window, composed, controlled. They had no idea what was coming. No idea that their dismissive laughter, their public humiliation, their casual cruelty had just determined the evening's real agenda. I pulled out my phone and typed a quick message to Nadia. "Full setup confirmed for 8:30. They just gave us the perfect introduction." When I returned with the ice, Ron was still going, explaining to a captive audience how these non-profit types were just enabling dependency and how real work means real profit. My parents nodded along, adding their own anecdotes about my phase that had lasted too long. I deposited the ice and retreated to my position by the garden, where I could see every face that had laughed, every relative who'd nodded along, every family member who'd stayed silent. The string lights I'd hung cast shadows that would soon shift into something else entirely. 8:25, 5 minutes until the transformation would begin. I slipped into the house through the side door, my phone already pulled up to the event coordination thread. Nadia had confirmed everything the mayor would arrive at 8:45. The testimonial video was cued, and most importantly, the surprise matching grant from Silverbridge Foods was ready to announce contingent on family participation. My first move was the DJ. Tommy, whom I'd hired and briefed weeks ago, was stationed by his equipment, playing the gentle background music I'd selected for dinner. I approached him during a Swedish House Mafia track that Evan had requested. "Ready for the switch?" I asked quietly. Tommy nodded, pulling up the second playlist labeled Community Hour. 8:30 sharp, just like we discussed. "You sure about this?" "Absolutely." I handed him the wireless microphone I'd hidden in the garage earlier. "When the lights change, that's your cue." Next, I found Evan by the beverage table, refilling his beer. My brother had always been the easier one, ambitious but not cruel, successful but still capable of seeing beyond his own achievements. "I need a favor," I said simply. He glanced at me, perhaps seeing something in my expression. "What kind of favor?" "Just need you to plug in the extra speakers by the garden, the ones I brought." "There's going to be a small presentation for the engagement." Evan studied me for a moment. "This isn't really about our engagement, is it?" "Everything tonight is about family," I replied, which wasn't a lie. He sighed but moved toward the garden. "You owe me an explanation later." The next piece required more finesse. I intercepted Maddie near the dessert table I'd arranged with geometric precision. She was still uncomfortable from the earlier comments. I could tell the way she kept glancing at me with apologetic eyes. "Maddie, you mentioned last week about Ron refusing to rent to that single mother." She nodded, lowering her voice. "It was awful. He said she wasn't worth the risk right to her face. The woman had her daughter with her too." "She's doing better now," I said carefully. "Got a job through a program I'm connected with, even secured a storage unit elsewhere." "Really? That's wonderful." Maddie's face lit up. "She might stop by tonight, actually. We're doing a small community thing Carol agreed to it weeks ago. Would you mind letting her in if she arrives? She'll have a visitor badge." "Of course." Maddie squeezed my hand. "Elena, what they said earlier, it was horrible. Your work matters." I squeezed back, then moved on to my final preparation. The backdrop banner was still rolled up behind the shed where I'd placed it this morning. "Neighborhood Thank You Night," in simple, elegant letters with the NRCA logo small but visible in the corner. I positioned it against the fence where the garden lights would illuminate it perfectly. My phone buzzed with rapid-fire updates. The police officer was 10 minutes out. The shelter coordinator had gathered 3 families who wanted to speak. The woman Ron had rejected was in the parking area with her daughter, waiting for my signal. I texted back quickly. "Side gate will be open at 8:35. Look for Maddie Brunette in the blue dress." So, the transformation of the space would be subtle but decisive. The string lights would shift from warm white to a brighter setting I'd installed dimmers earlier under the guise of ambiance. The speakers Evan was connecting would carry voices to every corner of the yard. The microphone would put control in my hands. But the real preparation was mental. I stood for a moment by the oak tree, organizing my thoughts like I organized emergency shelter placements efficiently, with purpose, without room for emotion to cloud judgment. I wouldn't rage. I wouldn't cry. I would simply present truth in a way that couldn't be dismissed or diminished. Checking my phone, 8:28. I pulled up the timer for the lights, confirmed the video link was ready to cast to the portable screen I'd hidden behind the drink station. Everything was positioned. The guest list was confirmed. The matching grant paperwork was in my bag, already bearing my signature and a $1,000 personal pledge. I thought about Ron's snort, useless work, and my mother's dismissive laugh about playing social worker. They'd created this moment themselves. Really. Every public insult, every family gathering where they'd diminished my choices, every time they'd held up Evan's salary or Brooke's traditional path as the right way it had all led here. One more text to Nadia. We're go. Make sure the mayor knows he's recognizing Elena Hart, program coordinator, not Martin and Carol's disappointment. Her response was immediate. Got your back. This family's about to learn what real work looks like. 8:30. I stepped onto the small platform I'd constructed that afternoon, just 2 risers my parents had assumed were for the band that would never arrive. The timer clicked over. The lights brightened with surgical precision. The lights shifted, and conversations stuttered to a halt. I stood on the small platform, microphone in hand, watching confusion ripple through the crowd. The backdrop unfurled behind me, Neighborhood Thank You Night in bold letters. Good evening, I began, my voice carrying clearly through Evan's newly connected speakers. Before we continue celebrating Evan and Maddie, we have a brief community presentation, 25 minutes, as agreed with Carol Hart when she generously offered this space. My mother's face went rigid. She started toward me, wine glass forgotten on a table. Elena, what is this? The community event you approved last month. I replied calmly into the microphone, ensuring everyone heard. You signed the permission form for the sound permit. Thank you for supporting local civic engagement. Martin stood up from his chair. This is a family party, which continues at 9. I interrupted smoothly. But first, some Riverton neighbors wanted to thank this neighborhood for their support during last month's storm damage. Surely the Hart family wouldn't deny flood victims a moment of gratitude. The calculated phrasing worked. Several relatives who'd been frowning now looked uncertain. Mrs. Patterson from next door actually nodded approvingly. My father couldn't publicly object without looking callous. Ron, however, had no such concerns. This is ridiculous. He stalked toward the speaker system. You're hijacking your brother's party for your bleeding heart, Uncle Ron. Evan's voice cut through. My brother stood by the speakers, his hand resting on the power cord. It's 25 minutes. Let her do her thing. I felt a surge of unexpected gratitude toward my brother, even as Ron's face turned red. You're enabling this nonsense. The documentation is all filed with the city, I continued, pulling out the permit. Noise ordinance exemption until 10 p.m. for community benefit events. The Riverton Police Department actually helped expedite it. As if on cue, Officer Daniel Martinez walked through the side gate, uniform crisp, badge catching the lights. Several relatives straightened instinctively. He nodded to me, then took a position near the garden. What the hell is a cop doing here? Ron demanded. Supporting community engagement, Officer Martinez replied professionally. Ms. Hart's program has reduced domestic disturbance calls in North Riverton by 40%. The department considers these events valuable public service. Carol grabbed my arm, her nails digging in. You're embarrassing us, she hissed, low enough that the microphone wouldn't catch it. I'm presenting my work, I replied at normal volume, ensuring the mic picked it up. The work you called playing social worker 30 minutes ago. The community disagreed with your assessment. Maddie appeared at the side gate, leading in a woman with a young girl. The woman Ron had rejected. She wore a visitor badge and a nervous but determined expression. Behind her, More people filtered in, families I recognized from the shelter, volunteers from our job training program, local business owners who'd partnered with NRCA. "Turn this off," Martin commanded, approaching the platform. "Now!" "Actually," a new voice interjected, "I'd like to hear what Elena has to say." Everyone turned. Councilwoman Patricia Reeves had arrived, followed by 2 reporters from the Riverton Gazette. Their cameras were already out. Brooke grabbed my other arm. "Elena, stop. This is crazy. Think about Evan." "I am thinking about Evan," I said into the microphone. "I'm thinking about the example we set, about what we call useless work in front of children." I looked directly at Brooke's twins, who were watching wide-eyed, about what values the Hart family really stands for. The backdrop behind me suddenly lit up with projection Tommy had synced to the portable screen I'd hidden. The NRCA logo appeared, along with statistics: 3,847 nights of emergency shelter provided, 392 job placements, 89 families reunited safely. Ron tried once more, his voice booming. "This is manipulation. She's using guilt and—" "Sir." Officer Martinez stepped forward. "Are you the Ron Kettner who owns Kettner Auto and Storage?" Ron stopped mid-rant. "What's that got to do with anything?" "Just confirming for my report. There was a discrimination complaint filed last month that we've been investigating." The color drained from Ron's face. Several relatives exchanged glances. The woman he'd rejected stepped forward slightly, her daughter's hand in hers. Carol's grip on my arm tightened painfully. "End this, please." "In 15 minutes, I replied. "After the presentations. After the truth gets the same airtime as the mockery." The visitors had formed a rough semicircle near the platform. The reporters were recording. The councilwoman had pulled out her phone, texting rapidly. And my family stood frozen, caught between their desire to stop this and their inability to do so without looking even worse. "You want to discuss useless work?" I asked, my voice steady through the speakers. "Let's discuss it properly, with evidence, with the people whose lives were impacted. Unless the Hart family only believes in discussions where the subjects can't respond, the trap was set. They could either let this continue or publicly silence domestic violence survivors and flood victims in front of reporters and city officials." Martin's jaw clenched. Carol released my arm. Ron stood by the speakers, fists balled but unmoving. 15 more minutes, I repeated. "Then you can return to celebrating real success." Carol's voice cut through the tension like a blade. "Everyone, please excuse us for a moment." She grabbed my wrist, pulling me toward the house. "Family meeting, now." The microphone was still in my hand as she dragged me past the curious faces. I kept my grip on it, knowing it was my only leverage. In the kitchen, Martin slammed the door behind us while Ron crowded in, his face purple with rage. "Take down that banner," Carol commanded, her practiced composure cracking. "Tell everyone there was a miscommunication. End this circus before you humiliate us further." "Humiliate you." I kept my voice level. "Like you humiliated me in front of 50 people. "That was different," Martin interjected. "That was family being honest." "That was family being cruel," I corrected. "In public, on purpose." Ron lunged forward, grabbing for the microphone. "Give me that!" I stepped back, holding it out of reach. "Touch me, and Officer Martinez will have something more serious than discrimination to investigate." "You threatening me?" Ron's voice was dangerous now. "I'm stating facts. Something this family seems to struggle with when it comes to my work." Carol discovered the backdrop banner through the window. "Oh my God, the neighbors can see it from the street. Mrs. Patterson is taking pictures." Her horror was palpable. "Elena, you've turned our home into a spectacle." "A community event," I corrected. "Which you approved, in writing." She spun toward me. I thought it was something small. "Not this ambush." 25 minutes, I said firmly. "That's all. Let the people speak. Let the mayor." "The mayor." Martin's shout probably carried outside. "You invited the mayor to our house without telling us?" I invited him to a community recognition ceremony. You're just hosting. Ron moved toward the circuit breaker. I'm cutting the power. The generators are already running, I informed him. Battery backup for the sound system. NRCA emergency protocols, we always have redundancy. Brooke burst through the door, twins in tow. Elena, there are more people arriving. Some woman with a news crew just asked me if this was where the Hart Family Fund announcement would be. What fund? I checked my phone. 8:42. You'll find out with everyone else. Stop this! Carol's voice dropped to a whisper, more terrifying than her shouting. Stop it right now, or you're no longer welcome in this house. The ultimatum hung in the air. I studied my mother's face, the woman who'd dismissed my career at every holiday, who'd introduced me as between jobs, even after 5 years at NRCA, who'd just publicly wished I'd chosen a real career. You're threatening to disown me for doing my job, I asked clearly, ensuring my voice carried. For 25 minutes of community recognition, you're destroying Evan's party, Martin accused, from outside. Evan's voice drifted through the window. Actually, this is kind of amazing. Maddie, come see how many people Elena helps. Carol's face went white. She peered outside to see Evan and Maddie talking animatedly with the single mother Ron had rejected. The woman's daughter showing Maddie a hand-drawn thank you card. Those people, Ron snarled, don't belong here. Those people, I responded, are your neighbors. They shop where you shop. Their kids go to school with Brooke's twins. But you wouldn't know that because you've never seen them as equals. A knock interrupted us. Officer Martinez stood in the doorway. Ms. Hart, the mayor's arriving. He wanted to know if you're ready for the presentation. Carol grabbed my shoulders. Please, Elena, I'm begging you, not like this, not in front of everyone. Then how? I asked. Quietly, privately, so you can continue pretending my work doesn't matter. We'll apologize, Martin offered desperately. Right now, in front of everyone. Just cancel the rest. I considered this for a moment. Will Ron apologize to the woman he humiliated? Will you acknowledge my work has value? Will you commit to the matching grant? What matching grant? Carol's confusion was genuine. Silverbridge Foods will match any contribution the Hart family makes to NRCA's Winter Shelter Program. It would be called the Hart Family Winter Safe Fund, a chance to put your money where your mockery was. That's extortion, Ron exploded. That's accountability, I corrected. Something you claim to value in the business world. Through the window, I could see the crowd growing. The mayor was shaking hands. The reporters were interviewing the families. The portable screen now showed a slideshow of before and after photos, families in crisis. Then, thriving. $5,000, Carol said suddenly. We'll donate $5,000 if you stop this now. The match requires a public commitment, I replied. During the ceremony, you planned all this, Martin said slowly, realization dawning. Every detail. I planned to be recognized for my work in my community, I said. You planned to humiliate me at my brother's engagement party. Which plan seems crueler? Silence stretched between us. Outside, applause erupted. Someone was speaking. Through the window, I could see one of the shelter residents at the microphone Tommy had set up. It's starting without me, I observed. Decide quickly, participate gracefully or resist publicly. Either way, the next 15 minutes will happen. 8:30 sharp. The lights blazed brighter across the yard as I stepped back onto the platform, leaving my family frozen in the kitchen doorway. The crowd had grown neighbors drawn by curiosity, the invited guests standing in a respectful semicircle, and my relatives scattered between them, uncertain where to look. Good evening, I began, my voice steady through the speakers. Tonight, in the backyard of Martin and Carol Hart, we're taking a moment to recognize something important. Not me, but the community that makes our work possible. The portable screen behind me flickered to life. A 90-second video began, no soft music or gentle filters, just raw footage. The fluorescent lights of the food bank at 5A, A woman's shaking hands accepting a voucher for groceries. A child doing homework at a shelter desk. A man in a job training program practicing interview answers, his voice cracking with nervousness. I watched my family's faces in the screen's glow. Carol had emerged from the house, standing rigid by the door, Martin beside her, his expression unreadable. Ron remained near the speakers, jaw clenched. But it was the relatives, the ones who'd laughed earlier, who looked most uncomfortable now. The video ended with a simple statistic. Last year, NRCA served 1,847 families in Riverton. This year, with your help, we've already reached 2,100. I want to introduce some people, I continued, gesturing to the crowd. These aren't clients or cases. They're our neighbors, our community, the people some call unworthy of help. Tommy cued the first speaker, Margaret Chen, the owner of Chen's Hardware, who'd partnered with our job training program. 6 months ago, NRCA sent me Marcus, she began, nodding to a young man in the crowd. Former addict, they told me honestly. Needed a chance. Today he's my assistant manager. Best hire I ever made. Marcus stepped forward briefly, nodding to the crowd before stepping back. Several relatives shifted uncomfortably. They'd bought supplies from Chen's Hardware for years without knowing this story. Next came James Rodriguez, a landlord who joined our safe housing initiative. I was like some of you, he said, looking directly at Ron. Thought certain people were too risky to rent to. NRCA taught me the difference between caution and prejudice. Their voucher program and mediation services mean I've had 0 evictions this year. 0. The woman Ron had rejected stepped forward. Her voice was quiet but clear. Last month, I was told I wasn't worth the risk for a storage unit. My daughter heard those words. She paused, her child pressed against her side. Tonight, she gets to hear different words. That her mother found work through NRCA's program. That we have a home. That someone believed we were worth it. Ron's face had gone from purple to pale. Several relatives near him had stepped away, creating a visible circle of space around him. The testimonies continued. A veteran who'd found mental health services. A teenager who'd escaped trafficking. Each story brief, direct, without manipulation, just truth stated plainly. The reporters scribbled notes. The cameras captured everything. Then Officer Martinez took the microphone. I'm not here just for security, he announced. I'm here because NRCA's crisis intervention program has transformed our district. 40% fewer domestic disturbance calls, 28% reduction in repeat offenses. These aren't just numbers, they're families staying together safely. Officers able to focus on serious crime. A community that actually works. He pulled out an envelope. Which is why the Riverton Police Benevolent Association is pledging $10,000 to NRCA's winter shelter program. Gasps rippled through the crowd. I saw Carol's hand go to her throat. Martin's eyes widen. They were realizing the scale of what they'd dismissed as useless work. The screen changed to show a thermometer graphic donations received toward winter shelter goals. The police donation appeared. Then Chen's Hardware. Rodriguez Properties. Local businesses I'd cultivated relationships with for years, all committing publicly. And now, I said, retaking the microphone, I want to thank the Hart family for hosting tonight. I looked directly at my parents. Their space has made this recognition possible. Mayor Davidson finally stepped forward, his presence commanding immediate attention. Even Ron straightened instinctively. The mayor was known for his careful political calculations. His appearance here was a statement. Riverton faces challenges. He began without preamble. Homelessness, addiction, domestic violence. These aren't distant problems, they're our problems. And people like Elena Hart don't just talk about solutions, they build them. He pulled out an official certificate. Which is why I'm here to present the Civic Excellence Award to Elena Hart, Program Coordinator of the North River Community Alliance, for exceptional service to our community. The camera flashes were blinding. The applause started with the invited guests, but spread through the relatives, peer pressure forcing participation. I accepted the certificate, but the mayor wasn't done. Furthermore, he continued, his voice carrying across the now silent yard, Silverbridge Foods has agreed to match any family contribution to NRCA's winter shelter program tonight, dollar for dollar. The Hart family has graciously offered to lead this initiative. All eyes turned to my parents. The trap was complete refuse now and be publicly exposed as hypocrites. Agree and validate everything they'd mocked. Carol's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. Martin looked like he'd aged 5 years in 5 minutes. The silence stretched unbearably. Every eye in the yard fixed on my parents. Waiting. The cameras were rolling. Mayor Davidson stood with the practiced patience of a politician who knew exactly what kind of moment he'd created. I took the microphone again, my voice cutting clean through the night air. Before we hear from the Hart family, I want to share something with those who think this work is useless. I looked directly at Ron, then at my parents. The woman who was deemed not worth the risk last month. She now manages inventory at a distribution center, a job she got through our placement program, with references, with support, with someone believing she deserved a chance. The woman stepped forward again, this time with confidence. My daughter wrote something, she said, her voice stronger now. The little girl, maybe 7, unfolded a paper with careful hands. Thank you, Miss Elena, she read, for helping Mommy get her job. Now we have our own apartment. I have my own bed. She paused, looking up at the crowd. And nobody calls us risky anymore. The child's words landed like stones in still water. I saw Brooke's twins watching intently, saw several relatives dabbing at their eyes. Even Martin flinched. This is manipulation, Ron burst out, unable to contain himself. Using kids to, Sir, Officer Martinez interrupted firmly. You're the one who told this child's mother she wasn't worth basic storage rental. Tonight. She's showing you who she really is. That's not manipulation. That's accountability. The crowd murmured agreement. Ron's wife tugged at his sleeve, hissing something urgent. He shrugged her off but stopped talking. I continued, pulling out a folder I'd kept in my bag. Every person who spoke tonight was turned away somewhere else first, denied housing, refused jobs, told they were too risky, too damaged, too far gone. The same words used about my work, useless, enabling, naive. The screen behind me changed again, showing a map of Riverton with red dots marking NRCA intervention sites, then shifting to green as problems resolved. The visual was undeniable, entire neighborhoods transformed. But here's what useless work accomplished this year, I said, my voice gaining strength. 392 people employed, 89 families reunified safely, 40% reduction in domestic violence calls, $28 million in prevented emergency service costs. Councilwoman Reeves stepped forward, which is why the City Council voted unanimously to increase NRCA's funding by 60% next fiscal year. This isn't charity, it's smart governance. The testimonies resumed. A veteran spoke about finding housing. A former trafficking victim described learning job skills. Each story was brief but devastating in its simplicity. Lives changed because someone did the useless work of caring. Then came the moment I'd orchestrated most carefully. Nadia stepped forward with a presentation board showing architectural plans. With matching funds from the Hart Family Winter Safe Fund, she announced, as if it was already decided. We'll convert the old Riverside Motel into transitional housing. 30 units for families escaping violence. The naming rights, of course, would honor the Hart family's generosity. The trap closed completely. My family's name attached to either groundbreaking generosity or public refusal to help abuse victims. The cameras captured Carol's face, cycling through emotions: shock, rage, calculation, resignation. $5,000, Martin said suddenly, his voice hollow. The Hart family commits $5,000. How wonderful! Mayor Davidson beamed, but his eyes were sharp. And with the Silverbridge match, that's $10,000 toward the fund. Who else will step up? The momentum was unstoppable now. Chin's Hardware pledged $3,000. Rodriguez Properties added $5,000. Even some relatives, caught in the moment and cameras, began pulling out checkbooks. But I wasn't done. I had saved the sharpest blade for last. I want to address something said earlier tonight, I began, my voice steady as steel. That people who need help are not contributing. That supporting them is enabling. That this work has no value because it doesn't generate profit. I paused, letting the words hang. Every person helped tonight will remember who helped them. But more importantly, I looked at Brooke's twins, at Evan and Maddie, at the young cousins scattered throughout the crowd. Every child here will remember what they heard adults say about helping others. They'll remember whether their family stood for compassion or contempt. The screen showed one final image, a photo from last year's NRCA holiday party. Hundreds of families, former clients now volunteers, gathered in celebration. At the bottom, a simple quote, "Useless work built this." Tonight, you've heard from police officers, business owners, city officials, and neighbors. They've all said the same thing: this work matters. It saves money. It saves lives. It builds community. I looked directly at Ron, then at my parents. The only people who called it useless are standing right there. The silence that followed was deafening. Ron's face had turned from pale to gray. Carol gripped Martin's arm like she might fall. The relatives who'd laughed earlier couldn't meet anyone's eyes. "We have one more speaker," I announced. "Someone whose story ties directly to this family." A woman in her 50s stepped forward. Well-dressed, composed, professional. Nobody recognized her except Ron, whose face went white as death. "My name is Patricia Walker," she said clearly. 20 years ago, I was Ron Kettner's employee at his first shop. When I reported sexual harassment, he fired me, called me a liar, a troublemaker, too risky to employ anywhere. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Ron's wife stepped away from him. NRCA's predecessor program helped me then. Legal aid, job placement, counseling. Today, I own 3 businesses and employ 40 people. She looked directly at Ron. I became everything you said I'd never be, because someone did the useless work of believing me. The yard erupted. Ron's wife walked straight to her car without a word. Ron himself stood frozen, mouth opening and closing like a landed fish. The reporters surged forward with questions, but Officer Martinez stepped between them and Ron, maintaining order. Martin moved first, his legs unsteady as he approached the makeshift stage. I apologize," he stammered into the microphone that someone thrust at him. "We didn't understand the scope, the importance." His words died as he met my eyes. "I'm sorry, Elena." Carol followed, her perfectly styled hair now disheveled from running her hands through it. "The Hart family is proud to support this work," she managed, though each word seemed to physically pain her. "We were misinformed." Ron tried to slip away, but Patricia Walker's voice stopped him. "Running away, like you made me run 20 years ago." The crowd parted as she approached him. "The difference is, I ran toward something better. You're just running." He fled then, actually ran, his dress shoes slipping on the grass I'd carefully watered that afternoon. Nobody followed. I took the microphone one last time, my voice calm despite the earthquake inside me. "The Hart Family Winter Safe Fund starts tonight with $5,000, matched to $10,000. But more importantly, it starts with acknowledgement that this work, our work, matters." I pulled out the pledge envelope I'd prepared, my own $1,000 commitment already sealed inside. I placed it on the donation table that had materialized, covered with a white cloth I'd hidden earlier. "This is my contribution," I said simply. "If anyone still thinks this work is useless after tonight, don't sign." Brooke moved first, surprising everyone including me. She walked to the table, pulled out her checkbook, and wrote in silence. Then she took the microphone. "My sister works 16-hour days," she said quietly. "She's missed family dinners to staff crisis hotlines. She's spent her own money on hotel rooms for families with nowhere to go. And we mocked her for it." She looked at our parents. "We should be ashamed." Evan and Maddie signed next, then cousins, then neighbors. the table filled with pledges. The cameras captured it all. Within minutes, $40,000 in commitments lay on the table, waiting for Monday morning processing. Mayor Davidson made the final announcement. The Hart Family Winter Safe Fund will open 30 units of transitional housing by December, and I'm personally nominating Elena Hart for the State Community Service Award. The applause started slowly but built to thunder. I stood still in the center of it, watching my mother's face crumble, my father age before my eyes. Relatives reassess everything they thought they knew about me. 9:15 p.m., 5 minutes over schedule. "The yard is yours again," I announced. "Thank you all for coming." The engagement party continues. But there was no party left. The invited guests departed with handshakes and hugs. The relatives scattered to their cars, murmuring excuses. Within 10 minutes, only family remained in the yard I decorated with such care. Carol approached me slowly. "You planned this for weeks." "Months," I corrected. "Since the last time you introduced me as between careers at Easter. We're your parents, who publicly humiliated me 2 hours ago, who've dismissed my work for 5 years, who taught relatives and friends that caring for vulnerable people is worthless." Martin joined us, looking older than I'd ever seen him. "What do you want from us?" "Nothing anymore," I said, beginning to pack up my equipment. I wanted respect, recognition, basic acknowledgement that my work has value. Tonight, I took it. "You embarrassed us," Carol whispered. "No," I said firmly. "You embarrassed yourselves." "I just made sure everyone saw it." Evan appeared at my elbow. "Elena, that was—" He paused, searching for words. "Necessary, long overdue, and absolutely brilliant." Maddie hugged me tightly. "Your work is extraordinary. We should have said so earlier." I finished packing the microphone, the portable screen, the cables I'd run so carefully. The string lights still twinkled above us, beautiful and useless now with no one to appreciate them. The perfect metaphor for how my family had seen me. "Are you coming to Christmas?" Brooke asked quietly. "I'll be staffing the shelter," I replied. "It's a busy night for domestic violence." Nobody argued. Nobody insisted family came first. They finally understood that for me. Family extended beyond blood. I walked to my car carrying my equipment, each step measured and sure. Behind me, I heard Carol sob once sharp, surprised, like she'd just realized what she'd lost. I didn't turn around. At the gate, I found Officer Martinez waiting. "That was something," he said simply. "It was necessary," I replied. "Your uncle there might be old complaints. If people come forward now, that's their choice. I just opened the door." I loaded my car methodically. The banner rolled up neatly. Neighborhood Thank You Night would be used again. The donation pledges sat safely in my bag. $40,000 toward housing that would save lives. My phone buzzed. "Nadia, you're trending on local Twitter." Useless. Work is becoming a rallying cry for nonprofit workers citywide. I sat in my driver's seat, finally allowing myself to feel the weight of what I'd done. No tears came, just a cool, clean sense of completion. They'd wanted me to explode, to rage, to prove their dismissals right. Instead, I'd been surgical, precise, devastating. As I drove away, I saw my parents still standing in their perfect yard, surrounded by the remnants of the party I'd organized, processing the bill for their cruelty. The useless work had spoken for itself. My phone rang 3 news outlets wanting interviews. Tomorrow would be even bigger. But tonight, I drove toward the shelter where I'd spend the rest of my evening, doing the work that apparently needed $40,000 and a public shaming to be seen as valuable. The work that was never useless, just unseen by those who mattered most. Until tonight. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're tuning in from. Drop a comment and let's connect. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts below. What would you have done in Elena's situation? Your stories and perspectives make this community amazing.